So I'm here today with Matt Barron, and I got to meet him at the Memoriade 2016 in Las Vegas, and it was a fantastic time meeting with him and talking with him. And he has a lot of great things to share with us today. So thank you for joining me today, Matt.
My pleasure, Johnny. Thank you for having the technological patience to wait for me to figure out how to get on this with you.
It's all good. Technology is always a pain. It always messes up when you need it the most.
Yeah, that's why all my presentations are very low tech.
Make sure, right? Less mistakes.
Yeah, just me up there with a whiteboard, and usually the whiteboard starts to sag slowly to the ground. Like, I told you this would happen. So,
Of course, right? Something can always go wrong. Murphy's
yeah.
Law.
Yes, sir.
And so Matt has his own specialty compared to my own. I kind of stay in the memory world. Matt is more in the mathematical world type stuff. But before we get to that and you explain the importance of mathematics, tell me about yourself, Matt. Just tell some general things.
Okay, well, thank you for that open-ended question. I'll try to keep it to like 30 seconds. So I was born in Cambridge, Massachusetts, which is right near MIT. And when I was growing up at the age of 10, my mathematical abilities started to come forth pretty strongly. And so the perception was maybe I'll end up at MIT. And instead, when I was also 10, my dad got me a subscription to Sports Illustrated. And that really fanned my passion for writing and journalism. And I became a journalist at 15. And a lot of what I wrote initially was sports, which is the intersection of words and numbers, right? All
Yeah.
sorts of data points. So it was a perfect fit. And so I went down the journalism path and went to Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. And I live in Oak Park, Illinois now, which is about half an hour, 40 minutes from there. And journalism, I started to use my math skills more and more within the newsroom. I was kind of like the resident math geek. When people had a question about anything related to math, they would come to me and I would guide them. And then eventually I started to do programs for press associations and newsrooms all across the country. And in fact, the first time I went to your state, Colorado, I flew into Colorado from Texas, where I'd given a talk, and I flew into Denver, hopped in the car, and I drove up to Cheyenne, Wyoming to give another workshop. So that was my first experience of the Centennial State, which, do you know why it's called Centennial State?
No idea.
Not about it. It was the centennial of the Declaration of Independence. It was founded in 1876.
Okay. I did not know that.
Yeah,
I never came across that fact, so I didn't memorize it.
well, and I should say it was admitted to the Union in 1876. It wasn't founded, but anyway. So I digress, which is a common thing. So my career in journalism spanned 20 years, and then about 11 years ago, I shifted into public relations, have my own PR, Park, Illinois, do a lot of regional work, but I also still do a lot of work in the realm of math training, presentations that are geared towards educating as well as entertaining people and trying to reach anyone from young to not so young. And when I say not so young, I've had people who are approaching 100 years old,
Wow.
which, by the way, it's easier to figure out their birthdays the day of the week, which I'll talk about that later, than it is like your birthday. You were born in 92?
94.
94. What's your birthday again, Johnny?
April 19, 1994.
You were born on a Tuesday, so we can go into that later. All right, so I digress. I'm the worst nightmare for an interview, man. I'm gonna go all over the map.
It's all
You're gonna
good.
rein me in.
It's all good. Makes it more interesting because it's not straightforward. You just jump on to different tangents.
Yes, and it was well in excess of 30 seconds, so I apologize to your viewers.
That's all good. Oh, so I want to ask you, what kind of math ability did you have? Was it just like you were interested in math, or like were you just really good at calculations, or what type of math skill did you have?
Yeah, it was good question. It's strictly numbers and the ability to multiply and divide and just think through numbers very rapidly. And so what's funny is that in high school, I was in the honors level in freshman year of high school, but it's going into all these other things that weren't strictly numbers. Is I don't know what you know how to refer to these things. And it was higher level, and I ended up going, you know what, time out, move me out of this thing. And so I moved to a, still a high level, but not as high. And then By the time college rolled around, I had to take one math class to satisfy prerequisite for my journalism degree, and I got a C. It was math for jocks and Matt, and I got a C. That tells you, you know, playing to give me a day of the week or a date, anything to do with strictly numbers, I'm all over it. It's just involuntary. It's something that God gave me, and I treat it as a blessing, though some people might think it's a curse. But for me, I love it. So that's my approach to numbers. One quick story is when I was a baseball player growing up, I could compute my batting average instantly, right? And so
Awesome.
once I finally got that first hit of the season, right, it took a while, then I could compute. So I was 1 for 7, which is 143. I knew that if I struck out or otherwise got out, I'd be hitting 125 the moment I hit that weak grounder to the pitcher. So, it's kind of a funny game within the game in my head.
That's awesome. So for you, it's more of a joy to do these, kind of mundane seeming things. Like, most people who don't like baseball don't ever care about the statistics or ever know what they mean, right? They see them on the screen, they're like, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a proliferation of stats now, right? Which they're getting kind of ridiculous. I remember when, it was Coco Crisp drove in a run in the 7th inning or later in the World Series for the Indians. And it said he's the first player 36 years or older to hit the go-ahead game-winning RBI and since 1950 something. I'm thinking, wow, somebody's done the research for this and is getting paid, which that's terrific, but that is pretty random, So I actually did some tongue-in-cheek research on the Cubs, and I figured out of the Cubs' 25 active roster players in the World Series, that it was 9 of them, or no, maybe it was 11 of them had been born on the day when the Cubs actually played a game back in the 80s and 90s. And their record on those days, I looked it all up, but I wrote about it. So they were one game under 500. It was either 4-5 or 5-6. See, if I was a memory master like you, I'd remember exactly what the record was.
That's true. That's true. But I couldn't do the math like you. I was just like, numbers.
Yeah. So, and I know you're looking to branch it to well, a lot of what you do is, remember, it's binary, right? 1s and 0s and all sorts of other numbers you have to memorize. So that's fascinating to me, what you've been able to do through that.
So that's what I find interesting is that the people from the memory world, they see you guys doing this mental math, but like, that's impossible. Like, these people are geniuses, but you see it, the memory guys are like, that's impossible. They're geniuses. So it's like the double standard, like, dude, they're just too good.
Well, yeah, we both, have trained our minds and have a joy in doing it, right? You wouldn't keep doing it if it wasn't joyful. One of the most surprising things to me when I have my roommate in college is now a broadcaster for the Marlins, and I was talking about different ball players he's known over the years, and one was a Red Sox player, and I won't say who it was. Said it to me kind of in a one-on-one thing. But this was a guy who was in the league for over 10 years, was an all-star, was a great, great performer. And he said, you know what? This guy liked hockey more. He wasn't even that into baseball. I'm thinking, how do you do that? How do you pursue? Now, obviously, the money was good, but it's that kind of that meshing of having it be a joy and being skilled at it. And some people, they get really good at something, but it's kind of drudgery. And my brother played college football. Division III football. He's a defensive lineman, undersized guy for DL, and he never really enjoyed football. I'm like, but for him it was a way of being part of a community and belonging and all that. Mm-hmm. So go figure, right?
Right. So that is interesting. And for you, because you were saying, you had this, I guess, inherent mathematical ability, but do you train on that to become better, to make it, I guess, stronger and more quicker, or is it just always instant for you?
Yeah, it's really, I guess the training is just the repeated doing in my mind. And it was only a year ago, it was last November 2015, where I decided to learn the whole day of the week thing and figure out how to compute, any day of the week from a date in history. And 4 years earlier, Scott Flansburgh, who's a mutual friend of ours, the human calculator, Scott and I were spending time one day, and he was doing that in front of a group of a couple hundred students. And I said, Scott, that's remarkable. I've seen people do that before. He goes, oh man, that's easy. You can do that. And it took me 4 years to finally pursue it. And I learned it within 15 minutes, right?
Wow.
But then it was a matter of fine tuning it and in repeating it and doing it over and over. So when you told me your birth date, I could say really quickly, oh, that's a Tuesday. So
how
where were we anyway? That's a big tangent again.
No, that's good. No, I like it. So how do you exactly do that? Because from my perspective, I could do the same thing. It takes a little bit of math, but a majority is memorizing a lot of codes for specific year ranges. Mm-hmm. But for yours, it's probably purely mathematic, right?
Yeah, it's strictly. In fact, here's a little index, or it's actually a business card someone gave me at one point. And so when I first learned this, I decided, okay, this here is the code for the day of the week. Oh, I just showed my passcode too for something. Oops. Please, no one go hack me. So you see there it says 144-025-036-146. That right there is the formula that someone else came up with, someone who's really gifted, that 144 corresponds to the first 3 months of the year. January is 1, February is 4, March is 4, and so on. And so when you said your birth date of 1994, it was April. Mm-hmm. So I took, it's 4 numbers that you add up, you divide by 7, and then whatever remainder you get, whether it's evenly divisible by 7, or whether it's a remainder all the way up to 6, that remainder corresponds to a day in the week. And so 94, there's also 23 leap days. So you figure out how many leap days there were in the century to that point. So now I happen to be really swift with division. So what I've cultivated my mind to do for years is really geared towards this. And so you don't have the next leap year yet. You don't round up. So it's 23. So 94 and 23, we're halfway there, right? We said we're adding up 4 digits. Mm-hmm. 4 numbers. And then the third number to add is the day of the month. And now in your case, the day of the month you said was 19. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. And I remember that because I knew it all added up to 136. Because 94, 23, and 19 is 136. Rapidly adding. Okay. And what helps is the code for April is goose egg. It's 0. So you don't have to do anything more. So 7 goes into 136. I happen to know this because I got the times tables in my head pretty sharp. 19 times with 3 left over. 17 or 7 times 19 is 133. Left over is 3, and 3 corresponds to Tuesday. Because 1 is Sunday, 2 is Monday, 3 is Tuesday, 4 is Wednesday, 5 is Thursday, 6 is Friday, and Saturday is 0, meaning if it's evenly divisible, if it adds up to 70 or 140 or 84 or any number that's evenly divisible by 7, mm-hmm. you know that's a Saturday. There's other things you got to do at the very end to subtract or add a few numbers, mm-hmm. you know, -1 or +2. For the 1700s, you do all that, then you add 4. And bam, you got it. So I'm a little bit slow in the 1700s because of that last operation to do. One quick point too, the 1600s, you know, we're talking on November 18th, 2016, and it's a Friday. Mm-hmm. November 1616 was a Friday because 1600s and the 2000s are evenly aligned. So that's one way where you can really impress someone by going, you know, if you can figure out it for the 2000s quickly, 1600s is the same thing.
Interesting. And so there's a lot of math going on, and you're just saying no. I was like, I was just trying to add some simple things together, you know, and you're just like instantly doing it. And so,
well,
in your head, that just goes rapidly. Like you don't really have to think about the process.
And what I do is I go from left to right. Like if you look at 94 and 23, and I visualize it. I know you're big on visualization. You got your memory palaces. This is like a memory palace dust mite. This is so tiny. All right. And so you have 94 and 23. Okay. And so the first thing I do is I go 9 plus 2 is 11 because on the left, and 4 plus 3 is 7. So 117. Now, what happens if it's 90? If you have 2 numbers that are like 97 and 24? Well, you know, in my head, I just bump it up to 121. I go 9 and 2 is 11 in my head. I know that 7 and 4 is 11, so I just roll it over. You know, so it's like an odometer on a car. Which, by the way, for all those out there who, when the odometer is about to hit a new threshold, like a new 1,000 or 100,000, or I recently in my car had 88,888, magical moment. And get this, I was just getting onto Route 88 when that happened. Isn't that crazy? That's here in the Chicago area, Route 88. So I'm getting goosebumps talking about it, Johnny.
Hey, it's numbers. That's the thing, right? Anything in numbers, coincidence, statistics, all those things.
Yeah.
And so, do you believe anyone can learn to, I guess, gain your capability of mathematical calculations or understanding?
Not my full capability, but certainly they can grow. And so that's what I always emphasize is wherever you're at, whether you're really, if you're as strong or even more gifted and passionate than I am, which, if I run into those people, I say, look, here's the marker, you come up here, and because I'll learn from you. Or if they're at the most rudimentary level. I mean, I love running into younger kids who are, tentative and insecure about math and turning the light bulb on in their head in terms of what they can do with math. And to have that aha moment of multiplying any number by 11, for instance. There's a really simple process called the 11 sandwich where, let's say, 34 times 11. Now, most kids, if they're 7 or 8 or older, will know 3 plus 4 is 7.
Mm-hmm.
A sandwich, what you do is you take the number you're multiplying by 11. So 3 plus 4 is 7. You put the 7 in between the 3 and the 4, and now you have 374. And so that's the 11 sandwich in its simplest form. There's a little more complex ways. There's what happens if it's 38 times 11. 3 and 8 is 11. And you drop one of the one in the middle, and then the other one you add to the 3, it's 418. But point is, we can do this all on a calculator. We can do this all on paper. And so what's the point of knowing how to do this and doing that quickly? And to me, it's exercising the mind. It's having a facility and a confidence with numbers. Mm-hmm. It's also as a consumer of the news. When I go and give these programs, Go Figure, Making Numbers Count, that's my website, 26 characters in Go Figure, Making Numbers Count, because Go Figure wasn't available. Go Figure, of course, it's a pretty common phrase, right? Yeah. But to be able to understand in the news, looking at numbers and be able to quickly discern if something doesn't quite add up, doesn't make sense, isn't used in context. That's the number one thing that journalists struggle to do, is to use math and use numbers in their storytelling in a way that is meaningful. Because it may be accurate to kind of vomit all these numbers in your story. It may be truthful, but is it helpful? Is it actually resonating so that the person that you're communicating with, your audience, can actually digest it and make a decision based on these numbers? Make a judgment of some kind about, I think I may have told you last week in Vegas, let's say it's snowing and there are 30 fender benders in the county that morning between 6 a.m. and noon, right? Well, how does that compare to a typical day? Is that double, triple? Is that 15 times the norm? Without that second number, you have no way of understanding if that's really a horrible morning for drivers or actually not so bad. And so that's people talk about how the media take them out of context. Mm-hmm. Well, numbers get taken out of context all the time.
That's true. And you think that's a big reason for, I guess, like, causing hysteria? Like, no, because they say, like, X amount of deaths, and people are just like, they assume, like, the year before or something like 0, so it's like, just a big jump.
Yeah. Unless you have the raw data behind the percentage change, it's really an incomplete picture, and you don't know. Right? You go from 2 to 4 versus from 40 to 41, right? Going from 2 to 4, you've doubled it. Oh my goodness. From 40 to 41, you've gone up by 2.5%. And so you can put those two alongside. This town doubled its number of murders. This town went up by 2.5%. Well, also, what's the per capita? What's the mode of death? I always make this point in my workshops since my kids were babies, and they're 13 years old now, that my children have been the fastest growing human beings in my household. Born. But amazingly enough, they're still smaller than me. Why is that? The smaller something is, the more room for growth. The bigger something is, the harder it is to grow and the more potential to go down. It's just a basic principle. And so it's kind of like expectations when you go into the movie and you go in with these 5-star expectations of how great it'll be. It's a lot more potential for you be let down than to feel like, it validated your high expectations. But if you go in thinking, what, this isn't going to be so hot, and it's pretty good, you'll be like, wow, that was a great movie. So that's right. And so that's just the nature of our expectations.
That's interesting. And this is what you teach people in your workshops, the importance of numbers and how to give them context instead of just saying a percentage or something.
Yes, and also, I have a fun game that's called Go Olympics, where G and then Olympics, and each letter corresponds to a certain category. It's kind of like a Jeopardy style format,
Okay.
or a game show format. And so I'll teach the principles, and then I'll say, okay, everyone, let's play Go Olympics. Someone throw out one of the letters from Go Olympics. And so, M is morons and lessons. So, more or less. And I have people guess, is it more or less based on the question I give them? O is obvious observations, which aren't so obvious sometimes to people. And so I like to reinforce the teaching by immediately putting it into practice. And so it runs the gamut from pop culture to understanding, how to discern the good, the bad, and the ugly from the media. It's also just everyday life of just looking at the world with a numerical vantage point and having numeracy. Numeracy is mathematical literacy. I'm the president of the library board here at Oak Park, and we're very much, one of our missions is to increase literacy in our community. But also, what often is overlooked is numeracy. 18 years ago, back when you were a little 4-year-old guy, we had I had to throw that in there. We had this program for my newspaper at the time called the Summer Math Puzzler. And so a couple of math teachers that I worked with we created these questions during the summer in the newspaper that kids could look at to reinforce and to help their mathematical learning, keep it sharp. Because in the summer we have summer reading programs, but a lot of times we don't have any kind of a summer math program.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
And so there's stagnation or kids go backwards. And so to me, you know what? Too far in any kind of a story without a mathematical element coming in. And likewise, you shouldn't be talking about numbers for very long until some kind of a story emerges. There's an undeniable marriage between the two, and the key is to be able to understand how to get along in that marriage, right? And not have all sorts of division, right? And so that's what I just love to talk about. So there you have it, Johnny. I've been rambling on. Are you 23 years old yet?
Soon. I'm closer. No, I like it. It's really valuable that people do put context or understand the point of numbers, because, I don't know how you think of mathematics. I think of mathematics more of like, you have an equation, you have a problem, you kind of solve it. But yours is also like, I guess, like statistical, more mathematics type stuff like that. And the main thing is, people just don't like math in general. They're just like, it's too complicated, it doesn't make sense, and things like that. And when you do the workshops, what do you find is the hardest thing to overcome? Like, what's the biggest problem these people have against math?
And I try to find that out really quickly. I ask people in the room, okay, whether it's 10 or 50 people, it's usually 10 to 50, I get a sense of people's own confidence and competence with numbers. Mm-hmm. So I have a sense of, okay, who to really steer some things towards. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes it's just, they just feel overwhelmed by it. And for some reason, at some point in their life, they've just told themselves, I'm not good at numbers, and I'm always going to struggle, and I'm just going to muddle through, right? And one of the things, and I can empathize with that, because I know in my life, I feel that way about other things. I feel that way about mechanical things. I mean, when I go to pay at the grocery store, to figure out which through all that it's silly stuff, right? Or to screwing in a light bulb. I'm pretty good at that now. So I say these things to let them know, look, I'm not here to preach to you like I'm better than you. I'm just like you, and I've struggled in various areas. This is one area where I have not struggled and where I've been blessed. And I want to help open your mind to the potential for you to be able to understand this more. And I break it down into just bite-sized pieces. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I had one kid in the class once said, With a knife? I said, well, you need a fork too. So, but yeah, and so it runs the gamut. A lot of times it's just like a general malaise when it comes to numbers, mathematical malaise.
Okay, interesting. And you think that starts as a kid? Like at the very like elementary level when they're trying to do basic, I guess, division, multiplication, they're like, I don't understand why these two things work and like how it works even.
For whatever reason, it's just not how their brain works, and it's it's funny how quickly people oftentimes give up. Like I'll do the calendar thing, or I'll do something way more basic than that, and they go, oh no no no, and they say wait, I just or they don't get it, like the 11th sandwich, they don't get it right away. I say, look, I've been teaching this for 20 years. Don't be hard on yourself. Too often we're too hard on ourselves. Mm-hmm. And we think that we should be able to learn it so quickly when in reality, this took me some time to learn as well. And so it's easy to forget. And that's why it's helpful for me to keep going back to my own roots with math. And frankly, when I do the calendar thing, I sometimes mess up. Someone gives me something from the 1700s or 1602, and I'm like, oh, and I feel a little on the spot. And so I let them know, look, it's okay to mess up. The path to success is not one success after another. It's failure. And then it's getting up from the failure, learning from it, failing forward, as John Maxwell has said. He's a great leadership coach and writer. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure initially when you started to learn how to become a memory master, you were probably maybe a little bit better than average. I know you're a great student, but you had to do some things to really train your brain.
That's true. Yeah, it's a lot of failing, figure out what systems doesn't work and does work. And at the end of the day, you question yourself, like, is this even real? Like, is this even working? It's just a whole load of crap. I'm just, you get to that point. And I can see where people, dealing with math, because it's not really, because math is kind of like, it's more abstract kind of ideas, so it's harder to kind of grasp, because you can't really hold it or see it. So they're like, man, it just doesn't make any sense what's going on.
Yeah, right. Right, and I think that it's so important to point out its relevance in our everyday life. That from the moment we wake up to the moment we go back to sleep, math is involved, right? What time do you want to wake up? How much time do you need to factor in to get? It's also about sometimes self-awareness, right? People say, "Oh, I'll be there in 5 minutes," or "We'll get there on time." Oh, there's traffic. Like traffic was not invented yesterday. You should have accommodated the traffic, right? I just dropped my wife off at the airport, and she got there in time, and it was fine. It was a little tighter than I would have liked, but you know what? It worked. But we used math, and so. And I know for you with memory, one of the books that you and I both have in common, at least as having been read parts of, is Moonwalking with Einstein. Mm-hmm. And our library actually 2 years ago had that book as our summer reading book, one book, one oak park. And in the book, Joshua 4 talks about, okay, what is the role that memory plays in our society today when so much is so immediately accessible through the internet, through the end of our hand? I can tap in a few things and look things up. But, one of the things I think is the broader of a foundation that we have of memory, of understanding, knowing that in 1901 is when Theodore Roosevelt became president. How does that tie into the world at that time? And his sixth cousin, or whatever it was for Franklin Roosevelt, and just to be able to, and that's frankly how I was able to do really well in history, is I hooked it to numbers, right? The dates on the calendar. And so whatever works for anyone to use these levers to really be able to summon it back when the time comes. And remembering names. Did you get to see Ron White when you were there in Vegas?
Yeah, I got to talk to him, yeah.
I got to talk to him as well. I did not get to see his performance, but phenomenal, his abilities. But, he encodes it in a different way so that he can then retrieve it. Mm-hmm. And so you can talk at length about that. We should turn the tables. I was a journalist for 20 years, Johnny. I should talk and ask you questions.
No, I'm good. It's you. I'm not prepared for an interview.
Oh, sure.
So, what we're talking about, it's really important that everyone, like you were saying, you're trying to teach. I hear the sirens. You're trying to teach, the young and the older, right? And do you think the problem would be solved a lot sooner if it was at the youngest age? Like, you teach them the importance of math, have them understand it, so they have this, like, pretty much crippling ability for the rest of their life.
Yeah, but that's true. And I would say though, it's never too late for someone to start to develop these skills. And I talk to people in their 80s who are like, and it's so great to see them also light up and go, oh, I see that now. And they get this kick. And I say, look, when your kids and your grandkids come to visit next time, because I talk to senior communities, as I was about to use a go figure term, a cutie quantitative term, I talked to a number. I talked to about a dozen senior communities in the Chicago area in the last 6 months. And to see the light go on. And it's so important because obviously, the older we get, the more we're susceptible to things that can really encroach on our memory, right? Short-term and long-term. And so, I would just say never give up. Never feel like it's too late to learn, to do something. I'm about to become a high school basketball ref, because I refed 30 years ago in high school when I was a player, and I would ref these little kids. Well, you know what? I've coached through youth sports, and now it's time with my kids now aging out of me as coach. I want to stay in the game. What do I do to stay in the game? And it's to be a zebra. So, I'll be able to call a foul and then tell them what day of the week they were born. It'll be a little added value.
Yeah, that'd be entertaining. That'd be fun. I like that. And I think you hit on something that is just about doing something, right? It doesn't matter. You don't have to be at your level or, that kid from India who did 125 dates in 56 seconds. You don't have to be on that level. It's just about doing something to get started.
Right. Yeah, and to making progress, incremental growth, right? Just like that young guy, 14-year-old from India who did 125. I was looking last night. In 2010, the record was in the 70s. And then I know that, Jan from Germany, who I met, terrific guy, he had the record at 96. In fact, he had it when it was in the 70s, and he got up to 96. And then, we had, Usneer, got it up to 111, 25, and he had time left because he ran out of numbers. He ran out of numbers to solve. How many more would he have gotten on that screen, right?
Right.
Now, my goal, I had never done it before. I had practiced once, 10 minutes earlier on someone's screen, and I got 7 in my practice round. And then my goal was to do 10, and I got 8, then I got 9, then I got 10. I was like, yeah, Then I tried a different approach. I inverted how I would look at the date in the calendar. I would do the international approach. And I got 5 because it totally threw my mind off.
Yeah. And
then the last round, I got off to a really slow start, and then I blazed through, and I got 10. I tied my own personal record. And so, and get this, there was no other Americans that scored higher than me. Or Americans that were competing in the moment, but I was the top American in that moment, right? Talk about the potential to mislead and use numbers to mislead someone. But my point is, though, my goal was 10. So was I a failure because I only got 8% of what this young guy got?
No.
I don't think so. I hit my goal. Now, the key then is if I want to go for more, what am I going to do? And last night I was practicing, And so I think I could get to 20 at some point in the not too distant future. By that I mean, before you were my age. But and so we'll see. And, and then what's the value of that, right? And that's the thing I think a lot of people have to go back to is, okay, why am I doing this? And sometimes it's just the intrinsic joy of doing it and just of testing yourself, right? Yeah. It's a way, because most of what I do in my office, this is my office in downtown Oak Park, is I write and I communicate and I create campaigns to tell stories about organizations and companies, right? But this is a way to keep my soul nurtured. It's one of the ways.
It's kind of like a therapy type, just something fun, something like gives you confidence.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been shooting free throws for the last decade. I've been tracking them on a spreadsheet. And so I go to the gym and I shoot free throws and I shoot lefty and I shoot righty. And my goal is to be able to shoot 90% with left and right hands.
Wow.
And I've gone from 81 lefty and 70 righty when I was, 9.5 years ago. This year I'm 88 lefty and I'm 86 righty. So I'm closing in. And so my goal, like I said, I may never hit 90% each, and this is, by the way, over the course of a full year. Minimum 5,000 free throws each hand. So you got to qualify it, right? Because I do 90 during certain sessions for 100 or 50 each. I can do it, but consistency, right?
Yeah.
But to me, that's part of my therapy.
Okay, that's interesting, And of course, you would track it because you're a numbers guy. You would track all those things.
So it's in my head as I'm shooting. I'm like, okay, I'm 53 of 57. I hit these next three. I'm hitting 93.3%. So again, I'm exercising that brain. It's kind of like a geeky athletic thing. So we should come up with a term right now, John. You and me, let's coin it. Geek jock. Is it maybe geekjock.org? Let's see if it's taken. We'll go secure that URL.
Geekjock. Okay. The combination of math and athletics together.
Yeah. Why not?
I like that. Let me ask you for a tip you could give people, and that is, what's the simplest thing people could do to get more into math, to better understand mathematics? Like, what's something they could do simply?
Yeah, first I can go to my website. No, shameless plug. No, but it is gofiguremakingnumberscount.com.
Send it to me and I'll include it. I'll make sure.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. I would just say, get around other people who are math, savvy and are passionate about math and teaching it. They're all around us. It may not be a high percentage, but I would say people in their own life, whether it's a child or a parent or a neighbor or a classmate, and just like ask them, how do you think about numbers? What are you doing in your head? And because one of the things I always talk about is that, to go from Chicago to Vegas, there's many ways to get there. Mm-hmm. You can take a train, you can fly in a plane, you can drive, you can hitchhike. There's so many different paths to get there. And math is the same way. So, you don't have to fit into just the one box that you learned in school. It's to open up to the possibility that your brain will be able to latch on to math more effectively through some other approach. And you can do a hybrid approach. It's not a one-size-fits-all in any way.
Okay, so it's the math we're talking about is kind of different than like higher order math like calculus or something, because average people, wouldn't be using that on a day-to-day basis, right? That's like
right.
Physicists, things like that.
Yeah. Well, it's also about, practically speaking, having a budget in your household, right? How much money do you gross? How much do you get to keep after taxes? What are your priorities in life? And then go from there. And then how much do you have truly to go on a vacation or to tithe to your church, if that's what you do, or if to give to some causes, or to go, dining out at restaurants. I mean, I keep track on these little sheets of paper. When I withdraw money from the bank, I write down on the back the cash spending so that I can see, $3 for a snack, $2 for this, $10 to get to this venue for this event, so that I know where the money is going. And I got to give my wife credit. She handles budgets and payroll for movies and TV shows. For years, she was telling me, Matt, we have to have a budget. We got to get a budget. And so for years, I said, yeah, we should. And we never did, because I resisted. And then years ago, we started doing it. Having kids tends to give you a little giddy up in these areas. Yeah. But that's a practical way of exercising math in everyday life so that it benefits your life. So that at the end of your life, at the end of your time frame, whatever it is for your year or your goal, you have hopefully some on the side so that you can then do other things with it than just merely survive.
So that's interesting, because you're just saying giving value to numbers, in whatever way possible, as long as they have some sort of significance. It's a lot easier to get interested in kind of math. Like for me, I see numbers as images now. Like they're not just numbers anymore. They're always some sort of picture in my head. So it always has some sort of value. Like 93, it's not 9 or a 3 or anything. It's a Big Bird. It will always be Big Bird to the day I die.
Big Bird. Big yellow Big Bird, huh?
For Sesame Street, yeah.
Now, why is it 93? Or how does he match up to 93?
But just kind of like how the code, I came up with the code and how it turns out.
You assigned it that way.
Yeah. It just turns out, happy coincidence, that Big Bird is 93.
That's funny. Okay, that works for me. I appreciate that. Like thinking about the states, the 48th state to come into the Union. Who was it? Now, I decided to look that up, 10 years ago. I was curious. And it was Arizona in 1912. That was 47 years before Alaska and Hawaii came into the Union in 1959. So that's it helps me remember it was 1912 because it was the 48th state. It was a 47-year gap. And number 47, by the way, was New Mexico. They were side by side. They've been the same day or day after each other. The thing is, it's just fun little banter. It's not going to change anyone's life, but it's what I choose to store into this 4 pounds up here. So.
But it's interesting. People are like, how you like right now? It's like, how do you know this stuff? Like, I am fascinated by it. I think other people would be too. They're like, this guy just knows this random facts.
Well, and I was on Sports Jeopardy last year with Dan Patrick, and I got there through my passion for numbers and sports. But I was with two other guys who are also really good, and it's just we put it, our attention on it. And like in law, I used to cover the courts, the criminal courts out in Chicagoland, and you've probably heard the saying: an attorney should never ask a question if he or she doesn't know the answer, right?
Yeah.
Telling a joke. You know the joke. Don't blow the punchline, right? Well, with this, I'm choosing, it's 100%. I know it. I wouldn't be talking about stuff I don't know because then I'd look like an idiot, right? And so, we self-select stuff, but we try to, at least I do, try to keep it somewhat relevant to what the question was,
Yeah.
what the occasion is.
So that's awesome. And did you do well in the Jeopardy? Like what happened?
I came in. I had the median score. There were three of us. That means I came in second.
The middle.
Now, I fell behind. I was in minus land. I was digging a hole because I got a few wrong, and I couldn't buzz in. It was so frustrating. I was wearing my thumb out because all three of us knew most of the answers. It's matter who can time it right. Because if you go too soon, then they lock you out for a quarter of a second, which equals an eternity in game show land. And so on the 8th or 9th question, I finally got in, and I was able to click through. But I started getting really aggressive on, I got a double Jeopardy question, and I said, I want to wager it all. I said, I want to double it. And Dan's like, double Jeopardy. I said, yes, double Jeopardy, whatever you want to call it. And I got the answer, because double Jeopardy questions, here's a tip, are typically really easy. They're softballs. You have no pressure of someone else buzzing in. You've got 5 seconds from the point when they stop asking the question. And so you can take your time. And so just a little Sports Jeopardy or Jeopardy tip for the audience as well. And so from that question, I burst into the lead.
Wow.
At the very end. And I thought, oh God, please let the lights go out. Be where we can just stop this thing. And instead, we kept going. We had like 5 or 6 more questions. And the guy that had been in first the whole way, he emerged ahead. And then the final Jeopardy, he got the question right. And here's the kicker. I started to answer the question right, crossed it out, and I put in the wrong answer. And so I was so hoping he got it right, because if he didn't and I messed up, I'm losing $3,000 by going from the correct. I would have kicked myself from Burbank all the way back to Chicago. Fortunately, he got it right, and so I wouldn't have made a difference. I would have come in second anyway. And so I made $2,000 covered. I made a little over $1,000 net because I had to pay my own way, which is totally fine. I would have paid money to get on the show.
Yeah.
It validated all those years of reading sports stuff and just storing it all in his head. It validated it. So
I think that's a cool thing too, because you do something that most people say, like, that's a waste of time, that's useless to have. But eventually, along the way, like you just said, it becomes something of use.
Yeah. Sure. And it's also, like I said, it's the intrinsic joy in the doing. As long as I'm not, neglecting my role as father and husband and son, you know what I mean? As long as it's not like to the point where, okay, Matt's been locked in that room for 4 days now. Does anyone know if he's still alive? It's not like that. I mean, back in 1998, I created a home run inflation index called the home run power ratio. When Sosa and McGuire were hitting all those home runs, which we now know were juiced a little bit. But I wanted to put all their feats into context. And so I created an inflation index so that you could compare Babe Ruth and Roger Maris in 61 when he hit 61 homers, which was the number they were going after, and they hit. McGuire hit 70 and Sosa hit 66. And when Barry Bonds, hit 73 home runs a few years later, I was able to show through my index that it was not even the top 50 all time adjusted for inflation, because so many of Barry Bonds' peers, other batters, were hitting home runs at a so much greater clip than historically were being hit, that his relative distance from his peers wasn't as great as Babe Ruth and guys like Mel Ott and Mike Schmidt and folks like that people were like, okay, yeah, they did well, they're Hall of Famers, but look at what Bonds is doing. Well, you know what? It's like the value of the dollar. A dollar today will go a lot less than it did 10, 20, 100 years ago.
That's true.
So that was merging my passion for baseball and statistics, and so it got into Sports Illustrated, and it's interesting, Johnny. In 1999, Sports Illustrated ran a small little blurb about my statistic, and it was the culmination for me of a dream that had begun
Yeah.
21 years earlier when I was a 10-year-old kid subscribing to Sports Illustrated, right? And so that led to a freelance career. It gave me the confidence that I was on a national stage to go from being a regional reporter to then writing for the Chicago Tribune and Time Magazine and USA Today and on and on. I became a columnist, a statistical researcher for Sports Illustrated for Kids. And that all helped feed into my work as a training people across the country with Go Figure, and then with my PR career, and now back with Go Figure. So those things I was doing for 30 plus years, all are the foundation for the confidence that, help propel me forward in my career. So, it's like these little steps over time, foundations. And I shouldn't have had to have needed getting into SI to know that I could write for these other entities, but it gave me that boost to make a few phone calls and then start to write for those publications.
That's awesome. It's so cool to see where you were and where you are now. Just the journey that took you there.
Right.
And
Thanks. Yeah, because we all have our insecurities, right? And so it's to know that, all you need is one champion. I've got 4 people are running for the library board that in my town because I put the word out. I said, look, I'm looking for people who are energized, that are passionate about serving, about the library, and also, frankly, preferably who are ethnic minorities, because we've not had any African Americans on the board for as long as I can tell. We have 1 Latina, and we have a very diverse community, 52,000 people. It's very progressive, very inclusive. And I said, this library board is not encapsulating, is not mirroring our community. And people, I have a blind spot. I can't imagine what it is to be an African American, right? I can't presume that. And so we need people who are in those shoes to be able to bring that experience and that perspective to be able to serve our entire community. And so, but that was just me saying it. If I hadn't said things to people, they wouldn't have run because they wouldn't have known, oh yeah, I can do that. It's not brain surgery. And so someone did the same thing 4 years ago that got my attention with that. And so I tell people, you have permission, and I say this to classes, especially kids all the time, you have permission to succeed, you have permission to fail, but don't stop at failure. Go through it, but you have my permission. If you need anyone's permission, I'm giving it to you because someone gave it to me years ago, and so I'm passing that on. You have permission to tell me to shut up because we're getting close to the time. I have a feeling we need to edit this interview.
that's all good. That's awesome though that you're motivating people through your own specific talent, or I guess talent skill that you develop, right? To give them their own confidence.
And through my own experience, exactly. It's but having empathy and compassion and understanding. We're all in this boat together. There's 7.4 billion people. And one of the things that I'm passionate about is building bridges. And I used to work for a survey laboratory at Northwestern where I went, and we were trained, when you do a survey, you want to talk to people from a broad cross-section to get a true sampling, right? And so when I did some exit polling in 1990, we were told talk to every third person who comes out. And so that was so that I wouldn't talk to a bunch of 20-something white people, right? Yeah. Or all the cute young ladies that I want to talk to, right? And so the key is to go be disciplined. Every third person, even if it's someone who's frowning, someone who doesn't look like me, someone who I'm a little fearful of, for whatever reason, they intimidate me. And it's to fight through that comfort zone. Because the bigger your comfort zone, the more you can do, right? So if your comfort zone is this size, that's a small universe. But if you keep growing that, and you don't grow your comfort zone by staying comfortable, you get uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But then you realize, look, I'm still intact, right? And so that's what I tell people, be willing to fail, because if you can learn through the failing and know that it doesn't mean you're a failure, you don't identify with that failing, you just know that, you know what, lost every political race except one before he ran for president. He was a multi-time political loser. And he also happens to be the greatest president in our nation's history. And what if he had decided in 1860 that he wasn't going to run? Where would we be? Just don't know. So.
Okay, yeah, that's true, and I think that's probably the biggest thing people have to realize about whatever they're doing, and especially when it comes to mathematics, overcoming that hurdle because with their understanding of mathematics and how the stuff numbers work, could give them more confidence in other areas, kind of bleeding effect over kind of everything.
Yeah, exactly. And even it's just so they can, like I said, basic everyday life, and just have some basic budgeting skills. Here's the thing, our government isn't very good at budgeting. Have you noticed this? You know about the big deficit we have?
Yeah.
And so I remember when I was 12 years old and our math teacher wrote, I think, the number 1 billion on the board. And he said, what is this? And I think at the time, I don't know if I knew this, but I may have guessed it. I said, is that the national deficit? And there's something like that. I could be wrong on what it represented, but I think it was like the national deficit, or maybe it was our shortfall that year. But it helps you kind of realize our government, the people that we entrust to lead us politically, don't even run balanced budgets. So many households don't run balanced budgets, right? Mm-hmm. And so if people would just get that concept and understand the role that math plays in that and be realistic. Because, one of the terms that I think about is there's income and there's also if-come. People say if-come. Well, I'm going to make that if this, that, and the other thing happens, right? Or if I get that tax return or if I get that promotion. You know what? That's not income, honey. That's if-come. So focus on your income. And my wife and I, I'm not saying that we're the paragons of virtue when it comes to this, but I will say that we lived below our means for a long time because when we had 2 babies, right, we had double the number of kids we expected. We were 8 months pregnant when we realized we were having twins. Talk about lack of investigative journalism. But anyway, we immediately realized, oh my goodness, her income is going away. Her income happened to be a little bit more than mine. That means our income is going down by more than half. How are we going to make this work, right? And so that's when budgeting got really serious in Matt Barron's world. And so, if people would just track the cash that they're spending and really be honest about where that money is going, that right there, I think could benefit so many households and so many people. I know it's benefited ours big time.
That's true, and it all comes down to understanding numbers. Having like actual money and having this imaginary money.
Yeah.
All comes down to, do you understand what these numbers mean? Do you understand the inputs and outputs and all these cash flows?
Yeah. Right. And, if I can just interject a spiritual element here, I happen to be a Christian and I'm a big believer in tithing. I mean, the Bible says 10% off the top. That's my belief system. Mm-hmm. And ever since I started embracing that, we've been blessed. And it doesn't always come in the form of making more money, right? It comes in the form of just being obedient to that and then having other blessings in your life and relationships, and just in other blessings through the people that we're with and things that we're able to do for other people. That's a blessing. And so, for me, that's God's economy. And so I remember when I was doing some reporting on LeBron James back in 2002 and 2003, just as he was about to go pro, and I was talking to someone in inner circle, and I let them know, I said, just so you know, if you're talking to LeBron and if it's something you believe in, I said 90% with God, 100% without. And so that's my little math equation for those who may want to follow that. Great. I know it can seem really challenging at times, but it's worked for us.
That's good,
I just segued really quickly to that, man. How do we wrap this thing up, Johnny? I'm going all over the map.
No, I got like 2 or 3 more questions.
All right.
So we're trying to shoot that quickly.
Cool.
Because I'm always fascinated about this. It's in the terms of, I guess mathematics, mental calculation. What was the biggest challenge you had to overcome for that?
With the mental calculation with the calendars and all that? Is that what you mean?
Or just math in general?
Or just in general?
Just math, yeah.
I guess I never thought about it in terms of challenge. I think it's because I love it so much. Mm-hmm. I guess the one thing is if I get pushback from people who might be dismissive of it or who think that it's a waste of time, is to know that that's their viewpoint. That's maybe for them it would be, right? Just because it's a waste of time for you doesn't mean it's a waste of time for me. And so I guess it's to like put a little bit of protective shield around me and go, I don't own that. That's, but it's not to like, you know what I mean? I'm here just to share who I am, what I'm like, what I'm passionate about. If some of it resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, talk to someone else, learn from someone else. Not everyone is a fit for another person in terms of their worldview or about what makes them tick. But I will say that numbers, you can never get away from them. And so that's the one thing I have in my corner is you may think that it's not important, but you know what? We're talking about some basic things here that are inseparable in our day-to-day living.
That's true. And so it's not really a challenge, the mathematical part. It was just external factors, I guess you could say. People trying to say like that's dumb. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
Why do you care about numbers so much?
Right. And sometimes I'll say when I go and I give programs, the giving of the program and the teaching is easy. But it's the actually getting booked is the challenge, right? You can probably relate to this, John, because you're gifted and you're passionate about what you do. You have an audience in front of you, whether it's one person or a million, you can go, right?
Yeah.
But it's how do you communicate to the gatekeeper, the one that is in charge of whether you can have that audience? And so I've learned over time, it's a numbers game, no pun intended, and don't let, each no is one step closer to the next yes. And so sometimes I'll take 5 or 10 minutes in a given day to develop my speaking program and to talk. Sometimes I rarely go more than 1 hour in a given day because I don't have the luxury, and I choose not to just put everything to the side and go, I'm just this. I go, I'm going to take half an hour today. I'm going to take 20 minutes. I'm going to go as long as I can till a phone call comes in, and then, you chip away at it. It's all eating an elephant. And so that's the thing is if you believe in it enough, and yet you feel like you've got something to share that is of value. And that's the thing I emphasize too when I do PR workshops. I talk to a lot of small businesses and I do workshops throughout the Chicago area. I say, never make a phone call or send an email or communicate with hat in hand, like, oh, please do me a favor. If you don't have something of value to offer, don't even begin the conversation, right? And so it's to have that fervent belief that you have something of value to give. Yeah. And don't come from a position of neediness, like I need you. I don't need people to book me. They may need me to share what I have to their audience, and I'm here just to give them enough information to make that decision. It's not arrogance. It's having confidence in what you've got.
Yeah, that's true. And I think that's a lot of people don't think they have the value to give to other people in whatever aspect, but so each person has their own value to give. They're talented or skilled in one area that they can just show to other people.
Yeah, it's to see it as a gift and to give it away. Now, if you get a paycheck at the end, that's a bonus, right? And I do pro bono stuff all the time. Pro bono is Latin for, hey, man, what's the phrase? With something in your brain. Pick your brain. And some people, pick away. I want to help you.
Yeah.
Because that's when it's truly love. You'll do it for free. So to this day, my wife has never charged me to be married to her. Right? And it's the same way with her because we love each other. It's love.
Yeah.
It's truly love when you do it for free. Now it's really terrific when you get paid to do it as well. And I've been fortunate to be able to get paid to do what I love my whole career.
Yeah.
Sometimes the checks are smaller than other times, but it's been enough to have this luxurious office here in downtown Oak Park.
Yeah.
Decorated by my kids' art.
Which is the best kind of art.
Yes, sir.
So, two more questions. Because I'm from the memory side, so I'm always interested in memory stuff. How would journalists and people in PR, do better, or would they even change if they had a better memory? Like, how would that influence them?
Yeah. Gotcha. Good question. Here's the number one area where I feel memory is so important, and that is remembering people's names. It's the gateway to relationship. And I think I'm average at knowing someone's name when they first tell it to me, but I'm really, really good at knowing their name within a day or so because I will repeat their name, I'll write it down. I'm not apologetic to go up to them again and say, I'm sorry. Well, I'll say I'm sorry, but I'm not really sorry. I'm more like, I'm determined to know your name. As a journalist, as a friend, as trying to turn strangers into friends or acquaintances, all those things require that key thing of knowing someone's name. So, as basic as that sounds, I think that's so important because as a journalist, if you can give someone the honor of saying their name, because it is the sweetest sound in the language, is someone's own name. That's from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, right? The sweetest sound, Johnny, right? is someone's name. And so, I could go into some other things that are maybe more specific to journalism, but I really think that is the gateway, because if you can say their name, you're open. First, you get their attention, right? In the classroom, you probably know, you talk to a classroom every week. You say a child's name or a person's name first, and then you pose the question. His or her attention, rather than saying something and then saying their name. And they're like, oh, wait, were you saying something to me? Right?
Yeah.
And so you say the name first, unless you want to catch them, and then you can say it last. But I would say that, that's something I think is so important, because journalism is the currency in journalism is trust.
Yeah.
If people will trust you, they'll entrust you with the information they give you, that you'll use it appropriately, in context, and with integrity, etc. You know what? That is key. And part of building trust is having that rapport that comes through the personability of knowing someone's name. It traces all back to that. And so I would tell people on the beat, when I wrote for the Tribune in particular, I covered 3 towns at the same time. I wrote 365 stories one year in 2004. I did count. But I would tell people, I say, I don't expect to earn your trust overnight. So I want you to know, you can give me information, I'll handle it right, but give me information that I can burn you with, and you won't be totally upset. And I would say it tongue in cheek. I'd say, my point is, we've got to build that trust muscle, and it's not going to happen just one day. So you had 2 questions. One of them you asked, what's your finale? What's the grand finale I should be ready for?
The grand finale. Are you ready for it?
You're stalling now.
Okay. So who could build a better rocket ship? A pizza or a carrot? And why?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad you asked that question, because I'm going to pivot. That's the word of 2016, pivot, to another question, which is, Johnny, do you know who's in control of the conversation?
The person asking the question?
You got it. Good job. That's the answer right there.
Just like that? You're not going to care about the pizza or the carrot?
Well, let me ask you, when you ask that question, do you intend for me to give a rhetorical answer, a whimsical answer, or an attempt at an actual serious answer?
An imaginative answer. Just what...
Okay. Well, I've learned that if I ask the question, I can take control back. No, I do have a weakness for pizza, so I'm going to go with the pizza.
Why is that?
It's just my own bias. Well, see, you just took control again, didn't you? I'll tell you what, because pizza forms 33.28% of my calories. I owe my very being to pizza. If I didn't have it, I don't know if I'd be able to function. Or that and water. That's another tip. If people don't get anything else out of this, other than a headache from all the random musings, they should get the need to hydrate more. I've only had like 1/2 ounce in our entire hour, Johnny. I'm getting really, excuse me. Oh. H2O, the most elegant formula of all time. What's the likelihood that 2 parts of hydrogen and 1 part of oxygen would create something that forms 71% of our Earth, that's part of the majority of our bodies, that we need? We need water more than we need food. You will die without water before you will die without food. H2O. Oh, and it's an accident. It's just some random fusion. I'm being facetious with the Big Bang. There's a creator who created.
Oh, now this get philosophical.
That's not philosophical, brother. That's just speaking truth.
Others may disagree.
They may, and they may be wrong, and they may be right. I will say this: there's divinity in numbers. Google Fibonacci numbers. Do you know about Fibonacci numbers?
1. That would.
2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, 34, 0.618. Hello. How does that happen? I don't think it's an accident, my friend.
Okay. So, okay. We can end it there with the thought.
A little thought bubble.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate you taking the time. It's been a blast. If I can reciprocate and have you on my yet to be determined video. I do have a video channel with my website, but I don't add to it very much. But this has been a blast. I told you earlier, you could be a journalist because you have a curious mind, right? And that's the foundation. That's something that I would say is so important for learning, period. It's kind of chicken and egg. Was I a journalist because I was curious, or did I get curious through being a journalist? And I think it just fed on itself, right?
Yeah.
And so it's also to be a lifelong learner. I learned things today. Hopefully you learned a few things,
Yeah.
like not so long, but it's about lifelong learning, and because either you're growing or you're dying. There's no plateauing in life. Plateauing is an illusion.
That's true. And I appreciate you, taking time out of your day to talk to me. And, if you want to learn more about math or getting started with math, you can go to Matt's website. So remember to send that to me, because I'll have to...
Right there. There it is. See, right there. There it is. You can put it right between these hands.
Okay, that sounds good. So right there, you're going to have it. The link will be down below, so you can actually click it. I guess you can put it on the screen, too. There'll be a way to get there. And, I just appreciate it a lot, because I always have an interest on other people's aspects on how they see things, especially, people in the memory world. It's kind of the same thing. You kind of know already what's up with them, but I like to take it in like how they use it in their own life, like how it changed their life. You met Johannes Mallow at the competition, right?
Yeah, yeah, I did. So many people from all over the world. It's just amazing, these skills. And Johannes, he's from Germany, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't know his whole story of how he came to not be able to walk, but that's someone who's clearly surmounted some obstacles and some probably doubts and naysayers in his life.
Yeah, and so because I interviewed him and we talked about it, and I think he has, if I remember right, muscular dystrophy.
Yeah.
And so like the weakling of the muscle, stuff like that. But he told me how memory pretty much saved his life, because like he was able to be good at something even though he was in a wheelchair. And
exactly.
So that was really cool to see that aspect of how memory saved someone or changed someone's life for the better. It's, instead of just a normal picture like this person can memorize a lot, he's a memory champion. That's kind of like a bland surface, but it's underneath what's more interesting and how it can help people and change people.
Oh yeah. Yeah, if you can recognize the value in every human being, everyone has value, and everyone, just about everyone is my superior in something, right? And so it's to keep that humility, to know even though I might be really strong in these areas, I can learn. I can learn from people, and being now in public office, when people come and they are upset about something and are critical, I am always on the lookout for how can I learn from this? What is it that they're saying that's truthful or that has validity that I can learn from? And no, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater just because maybe the way they convey it can be a little bit jarring or over the top, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes the delivery of our information can obscure the value of the information. That's why it's important to deliver it as well as possible and as graciously as possible. Not everyone has that for whatever reason. Their emotions get the best of them. I'm sure I fall prey to that too. And so that's a great point about Johannes and so many other people there that clearly, they've taken time and they are at the top of their game and top of the world in this area. And you can draw upon those successes. That's why it's so important to find that for any individual, to draw that out in people. And I love doing that. And I appreciate you taking the time to do this. You clearly are a lifelong learner. Your life hasn't been as long as mine, but by the time you get to my age at 48, boy, I'm really excited to see where you're going to go, Johnny. It's been a blast to get to know you.
Thank you. It was great that you reached out to me, or else none of this would ever happen, and we were going to have connected.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate it.
Take care. Thank you so much, Johnny.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, I appreciate it a lot. So make sure you go check out Matt's site, because I'm going to check it out to see, understand more math. I like math already, but I could understand it at a more fundamental level of it. So I appreciate your time, Matt, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too, Johnny.
Okay.